Well, everyone in the AO community. All right, there we go. We're live. Well, hello to everybody in the AO community. Brad Stevens here. Super excited to be participating in another mentor session with you. I have thoroughly enjoyed having an opportunity to be a part of this ecosystem. Just seeing all the commentary from all of you on Facebook, and just the thriving community and engagement. And it's just an honor to be able to take my experience over the last 20 years as an entrepreneur and leverage it to answer some of these key questions that a lot of you are navigating and dealing with, and can certainly attest that I've absolutely been in this place before. So again, brief introduction. Brad Stevens, been a lifetime entrepreneur for 20 years, built companies in multiple industries, product businesses, service-based businesses, and in my last business, kind of learned about the whole world of outsourcing. It's helped me save that company during a bit of a disaster that we had. And so I made it kind of the foundation of my knowledge set, and was able to launch a business around it. So now my primary company is called Outsource Access, and we provide fully trained, vetted virtual assistants and outsourcing resources out of the Philippines for entrepreneurs and business owners all over the world. And from a scale standpoint, we actually grew this company to we're right at 140 staff in just 12 months. So get a chance to see a cross-section of a lot of different companies, a lot of different businesses, and different perspectives. And so happy to lend that to each of you as I kind of dive into these questions and answer for you. So I'll get right into it and look at what we've got coming. And now these are some great, just meaty ones that hit right in some of my background and experience. So excited to dive in. First question is from Deanna Markel. Question she asked: I'm a licensed esthetician and laser specialist. I have 5 others working for me in my clinic, including a clinic manager. I want to stop working so much on patients and start working on things that will grow the business, and I need to delegate as much as I can to my clinic manager. I'm looking for ideas on how I could put together a list of all the things I want her to do and how to make sure she can report back to me on a daily or weekly basis. How did you put together a list of things you wanted someone like that to handle for you, and how do they keep you up to date? And do you use software, meetings, emails? I'm open to all ideas. Well, Deanna, I could literally speak for 3 hours on this topic alone. But you're absolutely thinking, in the right direction. I mean, as an entrepreneur myself, over the last 20 years, building multiple companies, it's all about getting yourself out of the business, as cliche as it is, so you can work on it. It's easy to say, but difficult to do, because ultimately it is absolutely about getting the businesses that are most effective and efficient is where everyone is executing on what is the highest value that they can contribute. What is their highest return on time that they deliver in the business? For you, doing actual treatments, or focusing on strategy that's going to let you open up additional locations. So you've identified that for sure. And so it's out, how do you not only just elevate yourself to the highest return on time, but then ultimately then it goes down to your next level of staff. How do you elevate so they're focusing on the highest return on their time, and how do you flank them with resources? So it keeps kind of waterfalling. So there's a template, and I can actually share and I can post in the Facebook group as well that I actually share. I do a ton of speaking as well. I mentioned, in addition to having a company, I speak to organizations all over the world about outsourcing and automating and delegating and efficiency. And one of the templates that I share is just a super simple one. And often the simplest things are most effective. And it's just 2 questions to ask key staff. And I tell all owners, say, look, give your these 2 questions to your staff. What are you doing every day that you don't think is the best use of your time? And what are things on the radar that we think could deliver a lot of value for the business that we're not doing? And just give them those 2 questions and say, I want you to think about it. And for question number 1, I want you to estimate the number of hours that you're spending on that task. And let's have a meeting in a week, right? And I want, whether it's one or multiple managers that you have, to put that list together. And it is amazing. I've done this with startups to $100 million companies, and it is amazing how eye-opening it is for the owners to hear the feedback. And it really helps create a master list of a lot of those things that are just not a good use of time, or things where there's a lot of value or opportunity. Because a lot of times your front staff and your managers have got institutional knowledge and ideas, but they never get invited to share it. And some of the best growth ideas and things I've had in my business has been from frontline staff because they're seeing it. So, and then put yourself through the same exercise. It looks like what you're going through is, what are you doing that you know isn't the best use of your time? That is a great list. Just that open question. Just start brain dumping, right? But then what are the things you want to be doing that you can't get to? and do that exercise yourself. Have your key staff do it. I can share the template. A Google Doc, you can have people put in their name, what the task is, number of hours, and just block off 2 to 3 hours to just discuss that. And it creates a great framework to begin with. Now, as far as once you've identified that, how do you translate that into a meeting and accountability architecture? So there's another framework that I've always used in my businesses. A lot of you may have heard of like EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or Traction. There's Rockefeller Habits. They're all great. I use a system called 4 Disciplines of Execution. It's super lean. It's super simple. I may have mentioned this on my last call. Again, I've got a whole free template guide that I've put together on that I'm happy to share with you. But the thing I love about it, Deanna, is it's super simple. And what it is once you identify what are those things you want to transition, is how do you keep people accountable? And the problem is that a lot of people don't have a regular cadence to their meetings, or if they do, people just generally share, rough whirlwind updates of what's going on, but they're not aligned towards a specific goal. So 4 Disciplines of Execution is something that you have an intentional meeting quarterly, right? And the team comes up with what are the wildly important goals we want to accomplish? What's really going to move the needle in the business, right? That we want to launch a whole new service offering and get at least 20 clients totaling $20,000 in the next 90 days, right? Very specific from X to Y. But a really key thing to this is not only come up with that goal for the quarter, but come up with 5 chronological steps to make it happen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, first we need to do this, then second this, then third this. Then when you have your weekly meetings, and I highly recommend you do them in person, you do stand-up, you have a scoreboard, and on this document I'll give you, it's one you can even print off, or you can keep it electronically in Google Docs. But they have to stand up and say, what did you do to advance the score towards making this happen? And literally you put a number of where they are on the 1 through 5. So as each week goes, you're updating those numbers. So you're seeing visual progress. And what I've seen behaviorally is what gets measured is what gets done. And when staff have to come into that meeting and that scoreboard's on the wall, they will change their behavior because they know that they can't just generally share a rough set of updates of things that they're doing. But what do they specifically do? When they have to go put a number, and if they stalled at a 1 and haven't gotten the task past a 1 or for 3 weeks straight, it's an indicator for you is the person the right fit? Do we have any underlying issues? So the framework of that meeting is, what did you do to move the score forward? Did you do it? And what are you going to do before next week's meeting to keep moving it forward? And I tell you, I've seen it from startups. So there's a $100 million company to startups that I've shared this philosophy with. And again, it's a Stephen Covey concept. It's not mine. I created, but I've done a simplified kind of version of it. I actually learned it from some colleagues of mine. But really great process for developing goals, holding people accountable, and that way you can truly have peace of mind that things are getting done. Right? So make that list, get it dumped and transitioned, translate that into what are some key initiatives that you want transitioned, and then use that framework to hold them accountable. So again, I'll share with you some links and a framework for it. Next question is Law Jackson. Question asked, hello again, mentors. I've begun making sales calls, and it's been interesting. A year ago, I would have fought with everything I had to not do sales calls. I'm at a different point now, and I have a few questions. 1, a lot of people are screen calls through voicemail. Should I leave voice messages? Do I read my script or just my contact info? 2, email in my lead sheet. I have emails and phone numbers. Shall I reach out via email to invite an introduction meeting? 3, best contact. Should I target directors and content people, or should I always try to talk to the CEO? I ask because with large companies, the guys or gals near the top tier are really short. Today was my second day of calls. A couple of times I legitimately was scared to call certain businesses, but I made 2 appointments. Right as I was bracing myself for nonstop rejection, we got a couple of yeses. Felt so good. On a personal note, I've been questions about bringing on a sales coach. Family members are getting in my face, trying to talk me off the ledge. It's a little frustrating, but very discouraging. I've heard people say that I would be told, you can't do it. It's like a punch to the gut for someone to tell me to my face. I could use some encouragement. It's not a bad idea to consider some of these. All right, so a lot to unpack there. So first of all, Law, just props for getting in the greeting. Any entrepreneur who's worth their salt has gotten on the phone and pounded and made cold calls. I've done it. I know most others have. And I tell you, it's some of the best things you can do in the beginning to learn your market, to learn exactly. Sorry, I look like I'm getting a notice that we're having trouble playing video. So hopefully I'm still streaming here. It says it's still going. So again, props to that. Having those phone calls lets you hear exactly, because if you're ever going to delegate and get someone into that role, it's good that you've had a chance to have those first-hand conversations and knowing what people are saying, what are the rejections, and the process. So I got a couple things I'll share here, and I'll try and unpack each of your questions. So a lot of people are screening calls. Should I leave voice messages? Do I read my script or just my contact info? I'll be honest. A lot of people say don't leave voice messages, but ultimately it's overall about what your architecture of the campaign is. I've never been a fan of just one point of outreach and contact. So wherever your lead list is that you've got, is I would have a broad set of all the contact points. Have their name, have their email address, have their mailing address, have their LinkedIn profile, and we use a thing in outsourcing called data scraping and data mining, where we do this all the time. We have people data scrape, and even if we get lists, we'll have somebody data scrape and fill in all the gaps. So you have all these multiple points of contact. Because sales campaigns are not just about one and done. It's about touching in multiple places and stay on what I call the nurture wheel, so that they're seeing and hearing you from multiple perspectives. So as it relates to just making the call, as much as you can. Some of the best callers in my last company, some of our best ones, when you would listen to some of their sample calls, it wasn't that they were super bright and happy and left a very formal message. They were very conversational because they knew what got responses. Even as simple as, hey, Brad here, just trying to connect up. Give me a ring when you get a chance, right? Just leaving that, right? And that creates a little of intrigue. They're not sure. Maybe is it a friend or someone? So that's a technique that you can try. Keep it very just light and conversational, almost like you're a friend that was trying to connect, like they've known you your entire life. Second, test that. Secondly, as far as actually leaving a voice messages, look, you don't want to waste your time on somebody that's not interested. And with a lot of voicemails, they're all transcribed now in our text messages. So people, the actual link, if you leave a URL, they can click on it. So something else, and I've done this in the past, is call, share very briefly what you're about, say, hey, don't want to waste your time. This is something we offer. If you have 2 seconds, there's a 2-minute video. Go to www.xyz.com and just create a URL. Even if you got to buy one and just redirect it to a simple page and maybe a 2-minute video that they can go to get more information, right? So it's a great strategy that you can use. So again, it's about testing, but both of those gives people a direct place to kind of reach out to. Emailing my lead sheet. I have emails and phone numbers. Shall I reach out via email and invite an introduction meeting? So again, this goes back, and again, let me zoom back on the macros. I'll talk about the nurture wheel. Is that what I would do is, again, get that list, fill in the gaps, right? And if you're not sure about data scraping, I can send you a link to a whole webinar that I've done teaching about data scraping and data mining. But do an email, then log in, connect with them on LinkedIn, right, and do a message there. And again, don't ask for a sales appointment. Create assets to begin with, right? Create educational assets about what you do. Create videos, create a blog on your site, right? Marketing is all about education. People don't want to feel sold to. They want to feel educated. So I would first create some of those assets to begin with. And sorry, I should have backed up and said that before I answered the first question, so that you've got some place to send them. So in addition to calling, connecting, then connect with them on LinkedIn. They agree to connect back. Then send them a message and say, hey, just love connecting with people. Thought I'd share what we do. We've actually got a great case study on our blog I'd love to share with you. Click here, right? You're not asking for a sales appointment. All you're doing is connecting there, sending them over to a blog, and ideally, once they get there, right, then you got some kind of an opt-in that captures their name and email address with another piece of educational content. I'll share an example with my company. We do this initiative, and we've written blogs about every single issue that people have when it relates to outsourcing and VAs. What about time zones? What about trust? What about competency? All of that. So we actually post links to those blogs, but then once they're on there for 30 seconds, we have a pop-up that comes up for them to opt in to a guide, then puts them into a nurture sequence. So it's all about just pounding the top of the funnel with education, getting them there, then they opt in, and they go into our nurture sequence. And in all of those emails, again, it's about education in the process. But at the bottom of every one, when they're ready to pull the trigger, they've got a link to book a call. So I would say do email, do outreach, but do a combination. Do your voice messages, do email, do LinkedIn. You got to touch them on that nurture wheel in the whole process. And definitely use an automatic booking tool like Calendly. Highly recommend it, right? Nothing bothers me more than when I get an email from somebody's emailing me, they're trying to sell me something, and they want me to find time in my calendar to email them back to have a call. There's a tool called Calendly. You may be using it. Some of you are, if not. But Calendly, there's another one called automated. Automation Link, I think, .com. There's a number. If you just click on automated booking tool, you'll find them. But Calendly I like. There's a free version. It's $10 a month. But at the end of the day, it integrates to your calendar, and you can create 10-minute, 15-minute, 30-minute links. So when you're emailing someone about your service and product, you don't have to say, hey, let me know a time, then we can connect. Right? Put that link in there and say, see below, and if there's a time that's convenient for us to connect. So you've made it easier for them to have a call with you. There's a company I was working with that they got a bunch of emails similar to what you're talking about, and they built websites for the public school system, right? And so they just data mined and got a whole list of email addresses and just data scraped and emailed out all of them and said, hey, we'd love to build websites for your public school. Is there a time we can connect, right? And just got a very poor response rate. They then transitioned and put in a calendar link, automated link, right, and did the same email blast, and they got a 10x increase in appointments. So it wasn't that the prospect wasn't interested in their service. They just didn't have time to go look at their calendar, right, and go create a bunch of bullet points and tell you, well, Thursday and Wednesday I'm available. So can't press on that enough. The other thing is that when you use an automatic booking tool like that, they can put in their phone number, so it'll send them text message reminders of the phone call. And with Calendly, it lets you actually send nurture emails prior. So if you want them to watch a short video, maybe a testimonial video or something before your call, you can set it up an hour, 2 hours, 2 days. You can send multiple ones that'll send them information before your phone call. So it just helps with conversion. It helps with people showing up for calls and actually making the call to begin with. So best contact, should I target directors or in content people, or should I always try to talk to the CEO? Again, I got a ton of stories I can share on this. I tell you, it's a good idea because those people that are flanking the CEO are contributing to the decision. Again, I don't know what as far as what you're selling, as far as the product, but it's a good approach, is flanking the CEO, and so that maybe when there's conversations, they have meetings coming up and they're discussing, maybe they can share that they've heard it or they've looked at it. Right, it's a game of numbers, right? So if you're sending out a link, you're sending them to a website or to a video to get educated. Maybe it's better. Maybe one of them will have had a chance to actually look at it. There's a company actually we're working with that was in the that had these markers that they put out to mark fiber that goes in the ground, and they wanted to sell a lot more of these markers to the fiber, these small telecom companies throughout the nation. And so did a data scrape and got a name and email address, LinkedIn profiles of all of the decision makers in the telecom industry in the U.S. and intentionally got not just the CEO, but all the C-suite flanking them. And when they did the outreach to them, right, you're hitting kind of a scatter shot around them. And a lot of times, surprisingly enough, when we checked the email open rates, surprisingly enough, the CFO, who was not the main decision maker for this product line, was the number one that opened up and clicked on the emails more than everybody. Because one of the biggest value propositions is that their offering was going to save the money on these markers as a direct-to-manufacturer offering versus distributors. So, again, I like to have stories and explanation, not just my opinion, to kind of back what I'm sharing with you. So all of that said is the idea of flanking around those others makes sense. Always try and go for the CEO, but it's an opportunity to get engaged around those. Again, going back to that multi-touch nurture wheel approach, when you're trying to go after top decision makers there, is again, do that email, do that phone, do LinkedIn. But something else that's a cool tool you can integrate into that multi-touch in the nurture wheel is automated handwritten letters. There's a program called Thankster.com you can go to, and they're not like the crappy-looking ones. They actually look like very authentic handwritten letters. And so what we've done in the past is when we're trying to go after a massive group, so for example, we have a lot of virtual assistants in the commercial real estate space. So we did a data scrape and got a list of a ton of commercial real estate agents and did this similar type of campaign. And so what you can do is when you email out, you don't want to waste money on these automated handwritten letters for people that aren't engaging, right? Because it's only like $2, but still costs some money. Is go in, and when you upload the emails into whatever your email marketing system in, make sure you include their physical mailing address. Because what can happen is after you email out, right, then you can take and run a report of all those that opened the email. So you know at least they opened it. Then you can export that out, and since you've already uploaded the mailing addresses, you have it right there, so you can export out and have the mailing address of everybody that opened, then upload it to Thankster and trigger an automated handwritten letter that's happening along with your phone call, along with the email, along with your LinkedIn touch, and an automated handwritten letter maybe with a specific URL or call to action in it. So when you're trying to go after bigger level decision makers, it's those multiple touch and be disruptive. And people, it's unique to get a handwritten letter in the mail these days. Another thing I'll touch on with that, if you haven't heard, a guy named John Ruhlin, he has a great book called Giftology. We actually just had him come speak for an organization that's fantastic. And so giftology, if you just look it up, John Ruhling's got it's a whole philosophy on providing super high-end, specific, unique gifts to top-end decision makers. And he talks about incredible stories of he sends like these incredible engraved knives and so forth. But when you look at the value of a customer that's worth 20, 30, 40, 50 grand a year, it's a very small investment. So again, in your whole approach to get up to these top decision makers, you got to be disruptive and do something different. All right. And last thing you shared as far as getting a sales coach around it, it depends on, there's a lot of great self-education out there when it comes to sales training. A lot of different philosophies. We actually have a sponsor for one of our organizations I'm in. It's called Sandler Training. And I've actually heard them speak and share. I know maybe people have had different experiences, but if you're looking to explore that, I've heard great things about Sandler. But they're a good coaching organization, because part of it's not just about the coaching, it's about accountability. And one other thing that just came to my mind I'll share with you on this topic too, and this is something I did in my last company, because we cold called. In my last company, we manufactured and distributed teeth whitening products that we provided to dental offices and spas and salons all over the world. And I had a bank of people pounding and calling after dental offices all day long, right? And when they get the decision maker, one of the things that we did to be able to get the dentist to show up on the phone and the office managers is we would offer a virtual lunch and learn. So we would ship pizza to the office, right, as an offer for the office manager to get that dentist to get on the phone, because they would get free lunch out of it. So I don't know if that would apply for you directly, but it was a great strategy. I probably brought a gazillion dollars worth of top Papa John's pizzas, but it was a great way of getting the decision maker on the phone and those in the office that were part of it. But the other thing that we did is we created a bank of stories to handle any objections. So once you actually get that CEO or that person, this decision maker, right, what are the objections that you're going to get? Right? And story-based answers to those objections are critical. So, when we would actually get that dentist on the phone, and our sales team would, I'm worried about sensitivity with your teeth whitening product, or I'm worried about having to switch to a new brand. So each of those objections, we would have a story that every single one of our staff knew that exact story, and we would have it like literally in a matrix, an Excel sheet. So, Dr. Smith, I know you're having that concern about sensitivity. I actually got Dr. So-and-so in St. Louis. I was working with him, had the exact same problem. This is what occurred. He went ahead and took the risk with us, and now it's one of the best experiences I've ever had. And like clockwork, they would use those exact same stories and literally have a story like that they could roll right into conversationally for every single objection that came. So now I'm getting into a lot more here, but you're talking about a whole sales process, because you got to identify where are the kinks that you're dealing with. Is it the lead quality? Is it getting the connection? And then we actually have the phone call. What's going to help you close more? So hopefully these are a collection of things that can be helpful for you in that process. And hopefully you're going to build a sales team below you, and you're creating a roadmap for that process for them. All right, let's see. I'm seeing a couple other questions popping up here. Okay, those are just same ones from that we're going through. All right, next question. When conducting an interview, is there a certain number of questions you should ask? So the name of the submitter, I apologize, is Heather Brockman. And the question is, when conducting an interview, is there a certain number of questions you should ask? I don't want to ask too many and draw out the process, but I also want to make sure I get all the information I need. So I'm assuming you're talking about interviewing for potential staff, if I'm understanding this correctly. So I can share from my experience on sort of what we do and my past experience with my businesses here, and also kind of what we're doing. We're going through 80 to 90 candidates a month with our virtual assistant business. I think it's total number actually be more than that now. But it's critical. You're vetting and filtering, and you should do that, right? Because the cost of making a transition with the staff is incredibly expensive. And a lot of people I find just do not put substantial effort into the front end process. Set a high bar. Because it's very costly when you got to make that transition. So, one of the things we do when we're vetting, because we don't even bring virtual assistants into our business to pair with our clients until we know that they're going to hit the mark. And so we do IQ testing, emotional intelligence testing, DISC profile testing, project management testing, typing and proficiency, grammar. We want to test everything that they've got to meet that mark. right? And it's funny. It's so funny when we provide VAs for a lot of our clients in the United States, and they see, because once they go to hire a VA with us, they see that entire profile of that VA and how they performed on all of that. They're like, goodness, I don't even do that with staff that are sitting right beside me that I'm paying 4 times that amount. For some reason, and again, I was very guilty of this myself in my 20s and 30s, and just not putting, just going purely after that just gut feel, and it bit me. So highly recommend put those in place. In addition to the interview questions, which I'll address, is put that assessment in place. Another great one is called the Colby assessment. It costs like $50 to do. But it's got a whole interesting additional assessment that it does, that it's that individual's propensity to take action, which is a really fascinating metric. So again, happy to, and Sean, I don't know the best way. I'm throwing out a lot of different possible tools and resources that I'll can share with you. But I've got a list of all those tests that we do, and they're free. These are all a bunch of these are free tests that are online that are available. As far as asking questions, it's all about just assessing behavioral motivation. Is there once you do that preliminary set of testing and assessment, that really, the reason why I like doing a lot of that is that creates the groundwork and the framework of the types of questions and interviewing that you want to do. And just really, it gets down to behavioral, motivation. Are they really saying it, or are they going to actually do it? And have them give specific examples, multiple examples, to not just say, well, how are you with motivation, or how are you with problem solving, or how are you dealing with conflict? Give them scenario-based situations. And again, you may be doing this, just sharing from my experience, is provide scenarios and how they would handle it, and give a couple of examples of how they've done that in the past. Not how would you just handle this, made-up scenario, but give me examples of how you've handled it, in the past. And other things, just throw them kind of curveballs. When they come in, is, how was your commute into work today, right? And you just get a sense, is the person just a complainer? Do they identify all the kind of problems that there are? Just the little nuances that ultimately snowball into bigger problems, to pick up on some of those behavioral things. But hopefully those are some pointers in that process. But again, there's not a fixed number of time on it. I think if you do that assessment, that does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. And ask questions until you get the right feel on the direction that you should take next with it. All right, down to the next one. Name of submitter is Allison Koyanagi. Hopefully got that right. Question asked, how should I structure free consultations for maximum efficiency for both the potential client and myself? I just had a call with a potential client that had the expectation that a free consultation with me also means that I would provide a free in-depth analysis of all their social media accounts and a free restructuring plan for their current marketing strategy. They desperately need help, but I decided on the spot that they weren't the right fit, since they were unwilling to tell me more information about their business and goals unless analyzed their entire marketing plan first and provided advice. This is an isolated incident and hasn't happened before, but maybe you can suggest a more efficient way of providing free consultations so every potential client does not have the same expectations. Thank you for your time and expertise. I feel like a lot of these are just teed up right for me today on some things related to my experience. This is another one. It's a pet peeve of mine as well. So Allison, what I would say is, I understand and can relate to your sentiments and feelings there. So one thing you can do, and again, I'll share through experience that I did in my business to address this specific thing, is when people, are asking about virtual assistants and so forth, when they have a sales call with myself or one of our team members, we were spending the first 15 to 20 minutes answering all the exact same questions, right? And things they had, and those would go down different rabbit holes, and they would ask them in different orders and so forth. So what I did is just put together a video, right? And again, I can share a slide of kind of but for like $120, you can get a wireless mic from Amazon, a tripod, hook it into your iPhone, and I did it. You see this TV behind me here, and I did it right beside the TV, right? And this is very intentional. I did it so that it showed me from the waist up, so that I can use my energy, my body language, and I had the screen beside me so that I can show visuals. And what I did was I said, look, in this video, I'm going to take you through exactly all of the typical frequently asked questions about our process, how it works, our price points that I want you to watch before our phone call, so that our phone call can be focused on really diving into your business and your specific needs to see if we're a fit. And I can't tell you how powerful that's been. It does a couple of different things. One is that we're able to have 5 to 10x more phone calls because they're 15 to 20 minutes. They're not 45 minutes where the first half is explaining. So we let the video do a lot of the heavy lifting on the front end. and it's able to communicate that information in the way I want it to be communicated. Not getting on the phone call and they ask different questions and we go down different rabbit holes. I can communicate it in an organized, architected way and provide visuals along with it as well, right? So that they're fully dialed in, get all their questions answered, can take some little notes as they're going through. And then we get on the phone. It's really about, hey, you watch the video. Any gaps there? Great. Let's talk about your business, and I can really dial in, know that we know what our process. It also pre-filters. We will not have phone calls with people until they have watched that video. That shows that they're committed to the process. They're willing to engage and review that information. And again, from us, we're protecting our time from an efficiency standpoint. And so it pre-filters. Lets us know if they're committed. And we actually go ahead and share our pricing in that as well. Because we focus on, we have a lot of high volume of potential prospects and stuff. And so I'd rather only get people through the funnel to the bottom of the funnel that are really interested and engaged. And I get amazing feedback from that. Anybody that goes through that process with me, the first thing they tell me on the phone is, first of all, let me just tell you, in our video, it's 25 minutes. Okay. Now, again, I can get away with that because our subject matter is very unique. It's different from people. I'm not selling a copy machine, right? But I'm selling a unique thing of working with a VA on the other side of the world that's maybe different and unique for people. We're going to try and trim it down to more like 15 to 20. But everybody says, I didn't think I'd be engaged and watch it, but I stayed the whole 25 minutes because you kept me hooked and you kept nailing all the questions, the dialogue. You want to enter the dialogue that's already happening in a person's mind. That's the best sales dialogue. So I've taken all the phone calls and every question that I've got from speaking and packed it into that video and structured it appropriately. So I would say do that. Partly as far as your beginning process. And if you don't want to shoot a video, you can use that Screencast-O-Matic tool that I shared on my last one that allows you to record your screen, your voice. You can have your little webcam showing up there and record it. But it's a great way. I have a friend of mine that sells franchises, and I told him about this strategy because he was wasting all his same time on people that weren't pre-qualified, and it made a huge difference. He had less calls, but a much higher conversion rate from people that went through that process. So I would recommend doing that and keep it tight in nature of your business. Probably keep it, if you can, 4 to 5 minutes for them to go through. And then make them put in the work ahead of time and answer questions. To your point, people are looking for free service and free insight and strategy. That's a lot of work. And in some cases, doing an RFP is kind of built into your cost of acquisition with a customer. But you don't mind doing that, but you want to pre-qualify. So maybe in addition to watching that video, have a short set of questions that they need to answer ahead of time. To show that they're going to put in the work before they can book a phone call, with you to dive into it. Last thing I'll share, and again, I'm all about outsourcing and VAs. It's what I live and breathe every day in my personal and business life. So, this isn't me promoting my business or industry. It's just, again, how I think and solve problems. Is I would leverage outsourcing on doing some of that heavy lifting. We've actually worked with a ton of marketing agencies, and whether us or you explore it otherwise. I've got a guy that we work with. That we found that he'll do entire business plans. So if there's a new market to kind of go into that we're looking at exploring, for $150, and in 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks, he puts together an entire business plan. So I don't have to use my team for $150. Our team can then focus on strategy and closing deals, and they do all the heavy lifting, ahead of time. I got another guy we found actually on Upwork that was originally from South Africa, lives in Bangkok now, and any market we're looking to go into. Pay him for $200 and he puts together a 50-slide PowerPoint presentation. So you can, again, automate and delegate some of that. And this is where you could actually take on some of these initial assessments where they see the value, but it's not you doing it, right? You're outsourcing it, and for less than $100, you can either data scrape all the competitors in that industry for them. You can offer just unique value adds that they think that you have a whole department that's spending a ton of time and dollars on it, but you can get it done super low cost and cheap. So it's I'll share another related example to that. I know a guy that's in commercial painting, and he paints grocery stores, right? That's kind of his business. Is they have a big team, they go paint commercial grocery stores, and it's a very commodity business. And so typically the client just gets a bunch of emails with pricing, and they choose the lowest price. Well, knowing how to do outsourcing, I taught him on this, is that he actually gets a Google Earth shot on the screen and uses Screencast-O-Matic to explain, and then posts it on Fiverr, and has a guy that does a full 3D rendering mock-up of that entire grocery store, and then does a drone flyover showing what it looks like before and after he's painted it, right? So he gets that done for $50. So now this gargantuan multi-zillion-dollar grocery chain thinks that not only did he send his bid over, but he provided an entire animated video that he thinks he has a department that spent $5,000 on it. So I share that example is that you can look bigger than you are, leveraging those resources and delegate some of that stuff so you're not hung on it. All right, next question. Adam Komorowski. question, has anyone bought a local email list from a company? If so, what are the key points to look for when dealing with companies that sell lists? Also, what email softwares did or do you use, or is just this not worthwhile? Thank you. I mean, Adam, when it comes to email lists, it's all over the map. I mean, there's tons of them that are out there. There's some good ones. There's some not so good ones. I frankly have defaulted a lot to just data mining and data scraping when I want to go get a lead list. So I haven't done a lot of buying of lists. But if you are going to buy lists from companies, whether it's a Sales Genie or whoever it may be, is I would just ask, what is the exhaustive nature of the information you're going to get? You can get email addresses, you can get mailing addresses, or their phone numbers, and then ask how often do they update the content of that list. A lot of these companies never update that information. So how often do they update and make sure that it's accurate? Because a lot of times people buy these lists and like 25-30% of the emails or whatever bounce or what have you. So I would ask also for a guarantee. If you start contacting and you don't get contacts, will they provide replacements? You can actually use your own tool as well. There's a tool called neverbounce.com. That you can actually upload emails, and it'll automatically test and ping for you and determine whether or not they're valid email addresses. So it's actually a tool that we use when we do data scraping and data mining with our team to do great names and email addresses. We actually, before they submit the list, I made them buy a subscription to NeverBounce, and they have to put it through it so that they can show me that they're valid delivery of those email addresses. But again, as I shared in the prior answer, I would focus on more than just email. I would see, can you get email? Can you get any social media handles, mailing addresses, phone numbers, so that you can do that multi-touch, nurture, wheel, outreach, not just a one-and-done email or phone call. And the other thing you can do is if you do have a good company that you can buy lists from, and maybe all they provide is email, contact, title, mailing address, but they don't provide like their LinkedIn profiles, a lot of times I'll use outsourced data miners that can go and take that list and then go fill in all the gaps, right? So you give them a list and say, hey, we got this list, and just put it in a Google Doc so you can share it. And then they'll go search and cross-reference all those people's names, their companies, and so forth, and go look on LinkedIn and other places and go find their LinkedIn profiles, right? And sometimes even find their social media handles. We had a client we were working with that actually, they wanted to get a list of all of the CEOs and C-suites that are also Peloton owners, right? It's kind of a random kind of request. You can't just go buy that list. But we ended up finding a whole online community of Peloton owners that we were kind of able to scrape that list, get names and email addresses, or get the names but didn't have email addresses. But then we could cross-reference that with LinkedIn to go find and use that information to go get their email addresses. So it's kind of some creative things that you can do. As far as email marketing software, I mean, there's a ton of them out there. It just depends if you're looking for a full CRM, marketing automation platform, or you're just looking for email marketing. I mean, MailChimp is a great starting place for email marketing. Again, be cautious when you're uploading, depending on lists and kind of where you're getting them from. And make sure you just have a super clear opt-outs as well when people are opting out on emails. But MailChimp's a great place to start if you're just wanting to do email software. We use Infusionsoft, which is now branded Keep, K-E-A-P. It's a little more sophisticated because it's a full CRM and marketing automation platform kind of all in one. But there's a ton out there. I would go to, there's a website called G2 Crowd, the letter G, the number 2 Crowd, C-R-O-W-D. You can go on there if you haven't seen it, and it does a great job of comparing and contrasting all the different Marcom softwares that are out there. All right, next submitter is Heather Brockman. Question: I like to have my employees set goals, either personal or professional, and reassess where they are at each quarterly review. What are your thoughts on creating regularly scheduled meetings and documents and sharing them and creating a system for the company? So Heather, heard me kind of do my rant earlier about 4 disciplines of execution. This falls right into that same category. Absolutely, you're thinking down the right path. And as an entrepreneur, I can't imagine not having an operational framework. I call it a goal development and execution framework that the company establishes. Quarterly, you meet, you commit 3-4 hours to it. You have your team, and critical to it, as I was sharing before, is it's not just the owner pushing down what the goals are, but when you make the team a part of the process, right, they're much more likely to execute when they come up with it. And again, not only coming up with a key goal, but coming up with those 5 key steps, in the process. So highly recommend looking at that. Again, I'll share a link to a kind of a free whole guide that I put together that has even pre-made blank templates and everything to do that 40X concept if you'd like to explore it. But yeah, highly recommend it. You have your quarterly meeting for 3 to 4 hours. You have your team come up with, again, not just answering the phones and emails and talking to customers and good customer service and so forth. That's what I call, Covey calls like the whirlwind. It's the stuff that keeps the lights on. It's what's the major initiative you can do in your role to make a big mark, right? We want to improve customer experience, ratings by 30% over the next quarter. Well, how are we going to go about doing that? Well, step one is we need to audit, our current processes of interacting with customers across the board. Then second, based on that audit, we need then to decide which ones we're going to revise and execute. So again, you put through that 5-step process and have your team come up with those 5 steps at the same time they come up with that goal, because by thinking through that sets them up for success, because a lot of times people choose goals, and when they start thinking through the steps, they're like, ooh, this is a little bit much to try and get done in a quarter. Or maybe they realize it's too lean. So come up with those 5 steps, and then you have weekly meetings every single week where everybody meets. They give a 2-minute update of where are you on advancing the score with your key goal. Did you do it or not, and what are you going to do next week before the next one? Again, I shared before the successes with it. Can't recommend it enough. And also, there's another framework. It's called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System Traction. They have another framework they called Level 10 Meetings. It's another great product and program that you can explore. Next question, Yolindy. Don't have a last name here. So I've had a side gig with a friend for 2 years to earn money to help my business grow. This year has shown exceptional growth in my business to a point where my side gig is too much to handle along with my business. I feel like it's a distraction and takes away valuable time that I could be spending on sales and business as well as personal growth. So I'm assuming this is describing the side gig. I run my friend's entire back end, all paperwork, tax prep, book balancing, and I deal with very sensitive financial information. I have open access to all accounts and financials. So this isn't something I could just hand over to somebody else. I feel stuck. How can I exit this without completely turning my friend's business upside down? Any perspective would be immediately appreciated. So Yolindy, first of all, applaud you for, wanting to do the right thing, with your friend. And look, hopefully you've had some conversations, some transparency that they know you've got your own business and that, this may be coming at some point. So it's good. Anytime you're going to get into this is to set the expectations right at the front. I'm like, look, this is where I'm at, and at some point going to need to transition. If you haven't had that conversation, first of all, that's where it starts, is having that conversation. But really just being super proactive and giving them a time frame and a game plan for support in transition is, take on the burden of like, here's what I'm doing for you, right? Document those processes so that they can be transitioned. There's a great tool called Process Street, process.st. That's an online tool that helps you document processes as an option, which everybody should do anyway for this exact situation, right? A lot of people have people with institutional knowledge. If they left tomorrow, they'd be stuck. So document process. Another way of doing processes is with a Screencast-O-Matic to let you record your screen. So that's actually with our VAs, that's how we document all of our processes with our clients. If they want to show us how they want a certain report run within a CRM, right? They don't need to type up a bunch of bullet points. They go click on Screencast. They walk through it. It records their screen, their voice, and their mouse. So they describe it. They share the link over. We save that video as a part of the documentation. And it makes it super easy. So you can use a combination of those videos and a tool like a Process Street, but you can just do Screencast if you want and just make a set of Screencast videos explaining all your workflows and processes. And then help, that outline will also help create the job description of the person that's needed. So it may be, I'm going to work out and get your protocols defined. Then I'm going to, help write the job description of the person that, that you need and create a time frame. You're going to do this over 60 days, 90 days, 30 days, and help with that transition. So I think that's the only way as far as the steps, if you're going to move in this direction and they feel that you've taken care of them, you've helped them that transition and given them a game plan, and you've created a, playbook of processes. And again, I know I sound like a broken record here, but I would explore, depending on, I don't know how much you're charging. If part of it's, another person's going to cost them more and you've been doing it on the cheap. But you can absolutely get outsourced VAs and bookkeeping companies. We do a ton of this for clients, and there's tons of outsourcing firms that do this that could be an opportunity when you're looking at options for them. Next question is Ben Cantu. Hopefully I'm saying that correct. I'm at the point with my business where I cannot scale, and it seems I cannot go over either an amount of money per month or a number of projects per month. I had this when I had 5 employees and also when I had 1 employee. I find it difficult to delegate tasks, but not in the way that I don't trust other people to do it, but because I find it time-consuming and I'd rather do it myself. Of course, this leads to frustration, and some of the work doesn't get done in a time. A problem that I see is being unfocused on one project at a time. My focus is now is on 3 projects / businesses, and this might be the thing that keeps me at this level. One business is an advertising agency where I deal with 15 to 20 businesses per month. What is the best way to work to avoid to be a one-man show, even if you have a team behind you? Well, Ben, I mean, I know it's cliche, but sometimes the cliche is the most accurate advice that there is you've got to make a mental commitment. You'll never kind of get past that ceiling, that I kind of talk about. It's sort of, there's this growth ceiling that a lot of companies, they get to, and then they just never get past it. And it's a constraint of people, systems, processes, or cash. But it sounds like, you're sort of that constraint point right now. And so when I find people struggle with transitioning tasks, is you're saying it's not trust other people, but you're saying I find it time consuming and I'd rather do it myself. So if you do have good people, so it starts with making sure you set a high bar so you have people that you can trust to take it over, right? And look, they may not get it all right exactly out of the gates, but you've got to set a high bar so that you trust those people. So if you've already established that, you trust those people, you not only just trust, but you feel they're competent. Right? There's a difference there. You can trust people all day long, not steal from you, but they may not be the sharpest tack. So they got to be competent. Then the next you say, I find it time consuming and do it myself. So this is, again, I'll come back to, I love that. Well, first of all, before I say a tool, is I'm sure Sean and everybody's probably talked about the book called The E-Myth. Maybe you've read it as well. But even if you have, I'd go back and do it again. If you're in this exact place mentally, that is the essence of what that book talks about, is being purely the technician and never flanking yourself with people that can kind of transition. And again, philosophically, many entrepreneurs know this in their head. They just struggle actually making it happen. So set a high bar for the right people to begin with so you don't set yourself up with failure for people that are not going to do a good job. Then secondly, use tools like that Screencast-O-Matic that I shared. A lot of companies we talk to, they're like, yeah, I'm excited about a VA, but I don't have to document processes. And we show them Screencast-O-Matic where they can just record and just talk and walk people through things. Makes it way easier. So they're not having to document or do a bunch of screenshots and arrows with text boxes and all of that stuff. But it's critical. And I see Sean mentioning here, Loom is another tool. I mentioned Screencast-O-Matic because it's just one that we use. And it's also got a little video editor built into it, so it's got some other functionality. But it's like there's a free version, and it's $70 a year is the paid one. But Loom is another one that's out there. It's a great tool. There's Vidyard. There's a couple other ones. You can certainly research others that are out there. But regardless, using one of those, it makes it so much easier to document your processes, explain things. And this is the thing. You will explain things with the nuances of your voice and with your mouse that you won't take the time to bullet point, because people get lazy when they have to document processes, right? It's like they sit there and they start bullet pointing and they don't feel like they're providing enough explanation. They get lazy about it, right? When you're using your voice and you're just explaining it, maybe you do write a few things out in written to bullet to kind of guide you, but then you can explain with your voice and say, John, and by the way, when you go into the CRM system, to create an opportunity, right, don't click this little button here. It always kind of sticks. Make sure you click this one over here. And you see this field, don't worry about it. It's always been there. We've been trying to delete it, but we can't, right? That little verbal explanation or little nuances that helps them be successful in executing that you maybe would not have put in the bullets of the process. So can't recommend enough how critical that is. All right, let me jump to the next one. All right, the submitter is Shelly Merrill. And also one thing I would share, Ben, is just, that comes back to also that 40X system. It's not only documenting processes and getting them, but also getting your team involved to accountability to execute. So the next submitter is Shelly Merrill. Question asked, currently having trouble with keeping up on all the tasks that need to get done. I'd like to hear the various mentors give their time and task management secrets. Shelly, that's a very loaded question. And it's, again, one that you could go and spend hours on discussing in terms of the tools and frameworks and everything that's out there. Again, as I've shared, 4 disciplines of execution in terms of your main goal development execution for your company and your team is critical. And that reduces down to kind of micro tasks that are involved with advancing those 1 through 5 steps in executing the bigger goal. But I can share personally what I do on micro tasks. So we use a platform called Teamwork, which is our master kind of project management, company management tool. There's a lot of them out there: Basecamp, Asana, Trello. I just personally like Teamwork. It's an Irish company, but they've just thought through all of the nuances, and it's what we load all of our key projects, everything that we're working on within our entire company. All our different management levels are in there. It also has a built-in chat platform that functions just like Slack, and it's just included as part of the price of it. And you can actually right-click on chat pieces that you're chatting about and turn them into tasks. So that's one of the tools that we use to keep master organized. And I have different sort of task lists that my staff assign to me so I can keep it organized. So, for example, one of the things that I do personally is I send a personal welcome message and interaction with all of our VAs when they come on. I'm huge on culture, and I want our VAs and our team to know I care personally about them, about their personal development. And culture is what allows me to have a company with 140 plus and growing at 20 per month on the other side of the globe. So, but I have a task list that one of our VAs, and whenever we have a new VA on, is they assign a task to me. They tell me who the VA is, who their client is, because I reference both of those when I do. And then I have in there sort of my base message, and then I adjust it and customize it to that particular VA. And so I start my morning every single morning with that task, and that's what's assigned to me in Teamwork. And I have another task list for financial things and so forth, so I can kind of organize it. The other thing I do is I try and block my week. It doesn't always work with things that come up, but what I try to do is I look at what are the key activities that I need to do during the week that are in different buckets. Operational activities, financial activities. I'm the president of an entrepreneur organization, and that's a big part of the world I got to deal with, so I block off certain time. And I feel that a lot of people, I was talking to my wife about this, is when they got tasks, they kind of log jam up. Right? If you think about your brain as kind of a river and just all these things jam up as a log jam, and then you just feel like you got to get them all done at once. And if you'll prioritize them and know that, hey, I've allocated Thursday between 2 and 4 p.m. to take care of personal financial matters, right? Then you don't feel anxiety on Monday at 4 p.m. that thing's sitting there that you'll have it done because you've already allocated time in the week. So I would take a look at what are the big macro buckets that you have: financial, operations, personal tasks, marketing. What are your key buckets? Give them a block of time and then block them in your calendar and block them out, and don't allow anything to get blocked around them. It's the only way you're going to squeeze those things in and make sure that they get executed versus kind of getting squeezed out. So Teamwork, using that blocking strategy on your time. And then, on a small little personal one, I use To-Do, which is a mobile app. Used to be Wunderlist, got bought by Microsoft. It's called To-Do. But as I'm running around, if a quick thing pops in my head that I know I need to take care of, or that I want to add to my Teamwork, task list, is I used to use To-Do. I use that to kind of pop it in there. And then it has a mobile app and a web base. So I have a link to it on my browser so I can quickly link. It syncs to it, and I can copy and paste that directly into my Teamwork. Because I can't access the Teamwork quickly as I want sometimes on my cell phone. And my wife and I use it on a personal basis. So the cool thing about To-Do is you can actually have lists sync. So we use it for our grocery list. If I see that we run out of eggs, I'll just add eggs to it, and it syncs to it, and so she's got it. So when she's ordering on Instacart or what have you, we kind of are in line there. So that's kind of my brief stack of productivity tools. Next one is Kristen Lattis. How many times is too many times to follow up? I had 2 conversations in the DMs, and one girl booked a call with me, and the other is still making a decision. I followed up 4 times in both, and neither is answering the messages, and I'm adding urgency, saying I only have 2 spots available in July, but still nothing. I really want to work on these projects as they're my ideal clients, and both want big projects done. So Kristen, and I don't want to kind of be too repetitive on some of the things, because some of the things I would share are similar to what I discussed above as far as strategies. But, it's, again, I go back to sort of that, that nurture wheel element, because the other wheel is the life and business event wheel. And I kind of look at the 2 of them going, and that nurture wheel is that ongoing touch. And again, not just being phone calls, but phone calls, LinkedIn, having them on a nurture sequence. In our business, in addition to kind of, if they opt into one of our, lead magnets and learning about VAs, if you want to see a really good one for that, go to outsourceaccess.com/help. We created this free coronavirus survival guide. If you opt into it, you're going to get a very intentional 20-part nurture sequence, and you can see exactly how we architect them. We establish credibility. We then share case studies, and then I do individual one-off FAQs. But highly recommend you have a good nurture sequence. You're touching them on multiple touch points. And maybe try, Kristen, some of the things I talked about. Check out Giftology with John Rulin. Try Thankster with automated handwritten letters. Just other ways you can subtly stay in front of them, but again, being education, driven. And look, if you've pushed the scarcity approach, number of spots available and they're not responding, right? That other wheel, there's something happening there. There's a life and business event that's happening that's keeping them. And sometimes it's something maybe you don't even know. Maybe all of a sudden, like, they're going through a divorce, and all of a sudden this is all off their radar. And you sending that is doing nothing but being more of an irritant in some cases. Could it be that they're talking to a competitor, and maybe they got better pricing or something, and they're kind of putting you off? But use that opportunity to stay on that nurture wheel, gently kind of continue with your touches. And I would say, look, way we do ours is kind of space them. So when people are in our initial buying cycle, when they opt in, we have a 20-part nurture sequence. It goes 2 days apart, but every email is very bite-sized and has one specific piece of consumable content that isn't overwhelming, and it's educational. But after that period, which happens over around 40 days, a little over a month, if they haven't engaged or bought from us or booked a call to want to get a virtual assistant, then they go into our long-term nurture where they just get one email a week, and they're on what we call our addictive tool series. And it's a once-a-week tool that we share, just a cool tool. And everybody loves that. Get an endorphin hit, whether it's a Screencast-O-Matic or, Dashlane for automatic password sharing, just a cool tool. Everybody loves that. And I highly recommend any business that you're in, if you don't get them to buy during that consideration set or whatever it may be, stay on that nurture wheel with something weekly that's high value, education-driven, bite-sized, because there's something will happen on that life and business event. They'll get through that divorce. That other person they chose, a competitor, will screw the pooch and mess things up, and, they'll want to revisit with you. And then try some of those other techniques, with Thankster, or even try the gift strategy. I'm telling you, John Rulin, he did a 2-hour event with us and was really impressed by doing something disruptive like that. And there's a very specific philosophy he has on doing it. You don't have your logo or company logo. It's personalized to them, but it can be something that can move the needle. So we continue to stay in touch, and so you kind of get an answer otherwise, but reduce your kind of frequency back. One other thing I would say, Kristen, is just invite them to share with you and just say, hey, I completely understand if it's not a fit. If you could just be transparent and let me know, just so we can improve our process. Is it pricing? What is it? And actually, at one point, another company of mine, we had a survey that would go out that would let them choose, just check a box of 1 of 5 things of why they didn't end up moving forward with us. So at least you invite them to be open and say, look, you're not going to hurt my feelings. If you've chosen somebody else, we'd just like to know so we can improve our process. Next question is Alexander Haig. Hi, mentors. I had a Skype call with AkaShawnThomas about a month ago on what I thought would be how to approach my business as a personal trainer coming back after the coronavirus. He asked me an important question. Should you even be offering a product in a hugely saturated field where anyone can basically get it for free online? And as he reminds me, there is no right or wrong answer to the question. So I've been thinking about this over and over and come to the conclusion that being an entrepreneur doesn't mean doing something that involves your personal hobby or lifestyle. Now I have to start all over and having such a hard time figuring out how to move on from here. As I look out for opportunities, keep up with the AO content, read books and materials on business, is there anything more you would recommend me doing on getting back to starting my own business? So Alexander, it's a tough thing. We'd love to have our passions and our entrepreneurial, place intersect as much as possible. And ultimately, if you're going to ultimately be successful, most people will tell you, you got to find something that you are definitely, passionate about, or you won't take what it takes. You won't do what it takes to make it a reality. To, as someone shared earlier, to get on that phone and pound and make the phone calls that you got to make if you just aren't passionate about it and it's just about, about money. So, again, I'm a big fan when I'm exploring, new markets and opportunities is trying to get, as I shared in one of the examples before, is just trying to get information, assemble. Is there some alternative paths or opportunities out there in the fitness field that are niches that haven't been exploited, that are specific types of customers that you can go after? We talk about niching down. God, the name escapes me right now, but there's a great guy out there that's written a whole book about how to do nothing but niche down and find specific niches. So that's one thing, is before you kind of completely throw out, training, is there a niche that you can specifically go after that people haven't filled that gap? So you don't just offer general training or training programs or online services, but maybe it's for 50-year-old executives trying to get back in the game, right? Or maybe it's 30-year-old, you're 40 and trying to work off weight from a pregnancy. Is there a niche that hasn't been filled because everybody? It's a large audience, and even if it represents 0.1% of the whole market, could be thousands and thousands of people. So I would look at first, can you niche down, and I'll try and remember that book that helps in that process. It's a set of questions you can ask to sort of narrow and narrow and narrow, and get to where it may be a smaller, considerable, addressable market, but maybe substantial conversion because you can speak to that specifically. Maybe look back at some of your clients. Who are some that you've really been super successful with? Is there anything uniqueness about them that you can kind of speak to? And then as far as exploring new business opportunities, again, when you're talking about just a blank slate, and there's actually the business model canvas, which is kind of a tool. There's a set of questions you can kind of go through because ultimately you are trying to find something that, what are the things that you are passionate about and you care about? And just sit down with a blank piece of paper, nobody around you, and just think and just brainstorm. It's amazing when you give yourself the gift of that time, what'll actually come out of your brain, and then you start writing, and before you know it, like the sheet's full. It's just think about things in your life that you've been passionate about, that you really got into, whatever it may be. Anything's game. Maybe you got loved flying drones. Maybe you're really into pogo sticks with your kid. I mean, is there something? Just do that brain dump, and then once you do that brain dump and you're looking at, is there anything there for a market? Right? Is it a highly competitive market, and is it scalable? So you kind of put yourself through those questions, but it's tough. And there's some people that look, they're all about the money, and they can go out and sell gutters all day long, right? And they're not necessarily passionate about gutters, but it's what pays the bills. But maybe it's consulting and helping homeowners, have a home and safe home is really what they're passionate about, and gutters is just a vehicle, for doing that. So sorry, not an exact direct answer on that, but there's a ton of books and resources out there online for helping people go through and think about brainstorming and niching down. But I would start with niching, because if you can find something within your passion set that you really love, which it seems that's clear, maybe there's just a niche you haven't uncovered yet. All right, we get to the end here. Last question. Looks like Allison Koyanagi again. Question: how do you properly communicate how your services provide value to their business? Allison's a digital marketing agency. When I look at value, for me, when I'm discussing, at the end of the day, most entrepreneurs and business owners, they're parting with their money, right, to invest in you. And so I like to start just on that conversation. I find that they appreciate it, they respect it, and it shows that you care about their dollars, right? And I find, unfortunately, a lot of marketing agencies that are out there, they talk about sort of the grand general idea of how we're going to revamp your look and your feel, and we're going to have the most beautiful website, and we're going to get incredible engagement, interaction, and the client's just sitting there thinking, how much is this going to cost me, and how many customers am I going to get from it? So something I like to do is I like to just get clear and this is something maybe you're doing, Allison, but I can just share from my experience is I just want to know what is a customer worth to you? What's an average customer worth? And that'll also help you determine who's the right customer for you in terms of what you're wanting to charge per month, so you can demonstrate an achievable ROI. If you're charging a $5,000 a month retainer, it's what is an average client worth to a business? We were working with sorry, I had a loud thump here all of a sudden. But we were actually working, trying to bring on a bank that provided bank and provided lines of credit, and trying to get them to sponsor an event that we were doing, and asked them that question. Said, well, what's an average client worth to you? And they kind of looked puzzled, and they kind of respected the fact that we asked that question right up front. And they said, you know what? Honestly, we're not entirely sure. Usually when we get pitched about sponsors, it's all about telling me how many people are going to be there and how many great decision makers, and we're going to put their logo on everything. So they had to go back and do the math on it, and come to find out that average client they were going after with us, with the line of credit they would get, would be worth around $20,000-$25,000 a year. I'm like, great. So now let's start there, and what we're asking you to invest is $15,000, right? And so of all these things, this is what we're going to do for you, right? Do you think that among all these things and opportunities, do you think that you could stumble across just one additional client that that would pay for this for the entire year. And every other client you get is just dropping to the bottom line. So I like to start with that question, even with providing virtual assistants, right? I mean, we charge, $1,500 a month, $1,495 for a 40-hour a week full-time, virtual assistant, which is, just under $18,000 a year. And a lot of people look at it, and a lot of business owners, they just think of just expense, and that's as a line item. They don't look as an investment. And I have to look at everything as an investment. And so, you're going to get this person for 40 hours a week, helping support you and your key staff, doing administrative, operational, marketing things. What's a customer worth to you? I don't know. Like commercial real estate agents is one that we've been working with a lot recently. I mean, they close one deal, they make $15,000-$16,000 in commission. So I'm like, do you think this person working for you 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year for a little less than $18,000 a year, do you think we could stumble across one additional deal that would pay for them for the entire year? And probably we do all these activities for you. Do you think we could probably land 5, 6, 7? Yeah. Well, what would that be worth? Probably $100,000. Well, what are you investing with us? 18? Does it make sense? Great. So that's when I talk about value. At the end of the day, I just like to get to what's the mindset, because they're not really listening, I feel, a lot of times, of all the fluff that's being shared about all the rankings we're going to get and so forth. Is what's a customer worth to you? How many customers do I need to get to break even so that we're at a break even point? And when do I start adding additional contribution margin to your bottom line? Now, let me show you all the tips and tricks of things that we're going to do, right? And then we can decide together, do you feel that is going to translate into at least 1, 2, 3 additional customers, whatever it takes to at least that break even, and everything else is kind of gravy on top of it. In addition to all the additional collateral benefit they may get with working with you, which is just, doing an assessment of their business, getting clarity, thinking about strategy. Those are additional peripheral benefits in addition to just landing clients. All right. Well, the session went a little bit longer than the last one. Wow, those are a lot of meaty questions, and I'm fortunate to have a lot of experiences and direct examples that I could share on those as we went through. So, again, Brad Stevens. My company's Outsource Access, outsourceaccess.com. If you want to see a video example I mentioned before, if you go to outsourceaccess.com/process, if you want to do a sales video like this I was talking about in your own business, you go there, you can kind of see how we've kind of architected it. And I'll follow up with Sean and figure out, and I'll try and share within the group how I can get some of these links and resources to you that I mentioned. So great talking with all of you, and you know what? Actually, just one second. There's a link that I forgot. We actually got a landing page we can create that'll actually have quite a few of these resources. So I'll drop that in here into the comments really quick. We've consolidated a lot of our resources and tools that I mentioned directly on this link that I just posted for you, so you can kind of check out there as well. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for your time. Hopefully this has been valuable. Again, try not to just share my opinion or fluff, but give you specific tactical takeaway examples and experiences from my background. So love doing these, and look forward to our next session together. Take care.